freaking first cut. Golly. Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your round 2 recap for this week's Rocket Mortgage Classic. And joining me to break it all down, it's Greg DuCharme. Greg, happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you too. An Independence Day Friday, nonetheless. So
yes.
Yeah, it's a big weekend. This is a big weekend. So
might be some long weekends here. The Friday off, maybe the Monday off, an opportunity to partake in presumably picnics
watching
and fireworks.
The Rocket Mortgage Classic. Oh no, I was
also
going to say watching the Rocket Mortgage. That's
all
I have on my plate.
Do you think there is some symmetry here with the Rocket Mortgage Classic on the weekend that rockets will be shot into the sky?
And the Rockets' red flare.
There you go.
Yeah, I do think there's some nice symmetry there, which is great. Yeah, it's an exciting weekend. One of my favorite weekends. Where I grew up, I was telling somebody else this earlier today. Where I grew up in upstate New York, my godfather used to always say there's only 2 seasons here in upstate New York. There's 4th of July and winter. So it's quite a short summer up there. But so it's one of my favorite weekends.
Well, congratulations to the 4th of July season for those who are, those are half of the seasons that you get in a year. Greg, we've got to do the top of the leaderboard. We also have news. We have been in this unbelievable news cycle, and these are 2 new items that came out here on Friday. Number 1, Hideki Matsuyama forced to withdraw from this said Rocket Mortgage Classic after testing positive for COVID-19. Of course, we just had Jon Rahm do this a few weeks back at the Memorial, and so of course Hideki withdraws, and now I guess the big question is, when is he available? How's he feeling? Does this put his Open Championship into jeopardy? What's next for Hideki? I have lots of questions. I don't have many answers.
If it were the U.S. Open or an event here on the PGA Tour, I would have no concerns whatsoever. But with the extremely strict, I guess is the word, extremely strict COVID protocols that the Open Championship has, it's definitely concerning. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised from everything I've read. I wouldn't be surprised if they just said, hey, you can't play. You can't play at all, because it was if you were exposed to it, right, through contact tracing, then all of a sudden you weren't allowed to play, no questions asked, even if you're vaccinated. So it's extremely tight, and anyone who's around it is basically out of the event. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hideki wasn't able to play. I mean, I know that it's still 2 weeks away and there's plenty of time, and what we're used to here in the United States is, well, he'll probably be fine for he'll be fine easily for the Open Championship. He wouldn't have any problem at all. Just very similar to Jon Rahm. It's a similar timetable. Jon Rahm even was a little bit closer and was ready to go this Sunday before the U.S. Open. So it's quite interesting. I'll be watching to see what happens going forward. But I'm quite frankly, I'm a little worried for a guy who's had a heck of a major championship season, even aside from his win, which at the Masters.
Yeah, for those who have not been following along, the Open Championship restrictions are much tighter. You alluded to this, Greg. If you are within any type of close contact, whether you flew on the same plane as somebody going over there, we've seen guys scramble. They were planning on sharing places together, or caddies were planning on sharing houses together. That can't really happen. That puts you at higher risk for the authorities to say, for the RNA to say, actually, no, what, you're out of here. So it's kind of a completely different story on that side of the pond.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, if the contact tracing is so tight the way that it's supposed to be, I got it that time. If it is as tight as that, and you're going to allow people to stay together, you risk losing half your field in one day. So you can't really allow both. So I understand the room and board situation once you have the contact tracing. once that precedent is set and those rules are in order, because look, rules are I'm all for rules, and I'm not going to get into right now the whether or not they're the right rules or the wrong rules. I don't think that's the story here, because it is what it is. Once you have these rules, now all of a sudden, you got to make sure that you're not going to lose your whole field. When you're that strict, right, you got to keep these guys safe. You got to keep them away from testing positive, whatever you could do, because all of a sudden it's going to spread. The tracing will spread. Whether or not the virus spreads, the WDs will spread. So it's very interesting. I hope he can play.
Certainly keep an eye on Hideki Matsuyama's situation over the course of the next couple of weeks. 2 names we will not see at the Open Championship because they voluntarily withdrew: Sung Jae-im and Siwoo Kim, 2 South Koreans who are opting to skip, Greg, the Open Championship to focus on the Olympics. Now, that might not make sense on the surface if you are unaware of what goes on here in South Korea, but there is a mandatory military service that you have to do if you are a South Korean male, I think between the ages of 18 and 35. And one of the ways to avoid that is to win an Olympic medal, Greg. So these 2 top-end golfers have decided the Open Championship is one thing. The opportunity to go to a 60-man field where you probably have a much better chance of winning, preparing for that is more important. That's going to be their focus.
It's no surprise that that is their focus. I mean, that golden medal turns into a golden ticket really quick.
Even a bronze medal turns into a golden. The bronze medal turns into a golden ticket. Yeah.
First, second, and third, it may as well be the same thing, because you just unlocked your entire career. I mean, think what happened to Sang-moon Bae. He's the guy that I think of. He's the first player that comes to mind who was really building a impressive career. Not dissimilar to Sung Jae-im. I mean, he was a really, really talented player. Had to go and partake in this service, and hasn't really come back since. So you don't know what kind of effect that's going to have on your career, on your game. So this medal turns into a lot more than what any other tournament could possibly be worth. It could, I mean, who knows? The depths of it, we don't really need to get into here, but it's extremely valuable for them, clearly. Now, the next question is, what's the best way to prepare for that? And that's going to vary player to player to player. So because of the proximity, also because the Open Championship is closer to Japan than America, I'm almost surprised still. I'm not surprised that they're going to focus on the Olympics and it's the most important tournament that they've ever played. I'm not surprised to hear that. I'm surprised that they're not going to play the Open Championship because of that. And my only thought is COVID protocols, right? I mean, is there another reason why they have plenty of time if they need to rest? It's not like it's the next week, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not. It's a couple weeks after. I would imagine. I don't know. Are they just gonna? Are they going to get to Japan? Are they allowed to play as many practice rounds as they want on that course? Are they just going to go over there and get 15 rounds? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know what the plan is.
If you had one tournament,
Jacob seems to know.
One tournament,
real quick. There is only a week in between the Open ending and then the start of the men's tournament for the Olympics. So, I mean, you could theoretically have, if there was a situation where you would have to quarantine for 2 weeks at the end of the Open, maybe that could funnel you into where you would be able to get over to Tokyo. I don't know how soon they're planning on getting into Japan, but I would assume they would have to have a good deal of time ahead of time to be as safe as possible.
So it's after the Open, you got the 3M and then Memphis.
That's it. No.
And then the Olympics.
The Olympics, yeah.
And then the Olympics. Right. So, okay, that makes a little more sense. If you have to, if you need a 2-week a 2-week quarantine just to get into Japan, it gets a little tight, I suppose. But man, I mean, I think about how do guys get ready to play tournaments? What is like for Phil Mickelson to go play all the practice rounds at Torrey that he did, to me is rare. Most guys play tournament golf to prepare. Think about Brooks Koepka. He likes to play the week before a major. So I guess everybody's different, but most guys like to play a somewhat steady schedule leading into an important event, so they get primed and ready, so that they're not shaking off rust in the first round of the Masters, for example. They've shaken off that rust at an event prior, so they're rested, but they're also in the full swing. So it's very interesting, and the protocols just make the decisions that much more challenging.
The Sangmoon Bay example that Greg referenced earlier, Sangmoon Bay, highly touted, comes over. He wins twice between May of 2013 and October of 2014. He wins twice on the PGA Tour. He is a member of the President's Cup in 2015. And then that is when he has to go fulfill his military service at the end of 2015. He comes back in August of 2017. The PGA Tour put into place a mandatory obligation category. So he actually got to keep his status, or at least keep it like a major medical exemption, Greg. And he was not the same. He never won again. I imagine taking 2 years out of your physical prime as a golfer, it's obviously a very important time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now there are stories of players going through military service and continuing to play well afterwards. I think Mark would know much better about this than I would, but I've heard Ernie Els and Retief Goosen have both talked about their time in the military before, and they were able to play a lot of golf. And they didn't really lose, with some of the officers that they had. They were fulfilling their service, but at the same time, they were able to play and keep their game sharp to some degree, which I would imagine is simply a matter of fortune. Whether who's your commander, who's in charge, what are their priorities? Do they like the game? Are you in combat? Is it wartime? Is it peacetime? Where are you stationed? All these things come into question, and when you go into the service, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what you're going to get, especially if it's anything like the United States military. As far as where you live, you could get moved around anywhere. My uncles, a couple of my uncles have been in the military for a long time, and they move station to station to station around the country, regularly. And so you just don't know where you're going to be. You don't, and it could be around the world. It's not always here in the country. But anyway.
I should clarify. He did Sangmoon Bay, that is, did win a Korn Ferry Tour event in 2018, the Albertsons Boise Open. Okay, Rocket Mortgage Classic here. So let's take a look at the odds board as we kind of break down the top of this leaderboard, because it's Joaquin Niemann, 10 under par, backing up his opening round 65 with a second round 69. That's 3 under par. He's the favorite, Greg. He's 4-1. He is tied atop the leaderboard with Tom Lewis, so 2 men at 10 under, but it's Joaquin Niemann who's looking for his first victory since that Greenbrier he won a couple of years ago, and trying to rekindle some of that magic that we saw from him earlier in 2021. Remember, he had that Florida swing where he finished, Hawaii swing where he finished runner up at both the Tournament of Champions and the Sony Open, trying to improve on those finishes here this week in Detroit.
You would think it's the field to do it in, right? It's the field to improve. This is a field for him to get a win. I'm very curious to see what happens this weekend, because he should be the favorite. He is the best player on the board right now, one of the best players in the whole field. And so he's definitely the best player in contention, I would say. So that being said, he should win. But this is golf. This is the PGA Tour. And the difference between Joaquin Niemann and Chris Kirk and Pat Perez and Richie Wierenski is very small. It's a very, 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 very small difference. So he is going to have to play very well to win, as is anybody who wins in this event. I love the fact that he's bogey-free so far. Are you concerned at all looking at the model, Rick? He's second in strokes gained putting. He's 36 tee to green. If this isn't Joaquin Niemann, are you saying this guy's going to hold on?
Well, I don't have to look far. I can look right at Troy Merritt, who has very similar stat lines. And I would say, oh boy, Troy Merritt is going to be plummeting down the leaderboard over the course of the weekend. I guess the good news about Niemann is historically he is a better ball striker than this. So if he can kind of just revert back to the normal version of himself, doesn't have to play particularly great, but he's already banked a bunch of strokes with the putter. If he can just kind of revert back to normal, he's still much better than a lot of these other guys who are in contention. So yes, I am worried. I am worried that he's gained 5.7 strokes with the flat stick and that he's only gained 1 on approach over the course of 2 days at a place that is a birdie fest. Yes, I am concerned about that, but I feel less concerned because I know his game is usually so strong.
Right. This is not the norm. Although he has been having a really nice putting season. We talked about that on Monday. It's been a really, really nice season on the greens. So for me, Rick, I am not saying that this thing's over by any means.
No.
Obviously, he's tied for he's not even a solo leader, but it's far from over. But I do think he is the best player left, and I am not as worried as the model would typically say. So I think we agree. We agree there.
The other guy atop the leaderboard is Tom Lewis, which this is such a great stat that Jacob has. So Tom Lewis has made 1 Korn Ferry Tour start in his life. He won it. He's 1 for 1. Just like, let me just go out there, play one of these, win it, and I'm done. It was a start in the finals in 2019. Obviously plays much more on the European tour than he does here over here in the States. But Tom,
that's how he got his card.
Yeah,
that event is how he got his PGA Tour card. If you remember, his agent said, "Hey, you should go play in this. You should go play in this event," and he did, kind of off the cuff. He wasn't planning on it, and all of a sudden he goes and plays and wins, and he's a PGA Tour player now. So you've been seeing a lot more of him this year for that reason. And I thought for sure, because he had a lot of success on the European Tour. He won, I want to say, 5 times on the European Tour, and I kind of expected Tom Lewis to have a really, really nice year. It hasn't quite happened. I wouldn't say.
If I can real quick here about Tom Lewis, I think this Korn Ferry one is great because anytime Kyle compares the European Tour to the Korn Ferry Tour, someone like from Europe in the comment section will just instantly say, well, what about the time Tom Lewis came up over here and just won the only start he played in?
Yeah, and that's great. And before the comments go crazy, I should clarify he now does play over here full time. I was referring to him playing. Yeah, that's right. Greg is absolutely right. That's how he got his card, and now he plays over here primarily. And the results haven't been all that great, but here he is in contention on a Friday evening atop the leaderboard. Max Homa shot a 65. He played great. Cam Davis looking good. So there are certainly some other guys near the top of the leaderboard, but I do also want to talk about some of the big names that failed to make the weekend, Greg. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Notable missed cuts. Some pretty big names here. Most notably, the odds-on favorite, the guy that was supposed to win this golf tournament at 7 or 7.5 to 1, Bryson DeChambeau, failed to really improve on his opening round 72, shot a 71. That's 1 under. That's where he finished the week, Greg, and he missed the cut by 2 shots. He's going home.
And also didn't speak to the media afterwards. You know, it's surprising to a degree. If you entered the week and said Bryson's going to miss the cut, I would say no, probably not. It's hard for Bryson to really miss a cut at a tournament like this. But when you know what happened with he and his caddy the week before, you know there's a lot more going on off the golf course than there is on the golf course. And it's very difficult to play when you don't have a clear mind. And it's clear that something is preventing this clarity, right? There's something that happened there. They didn't just, during an event, decide to say, I don't know, I think it's time to move on. That's something that happens comfortably at the end of a season, not on Wednesday before defending a title on the PGA Tour. You don't just leave Bryson DeChambeau's bag. So anyway, it's very clear that something happened. But I would say from a performance perspective, was strong in the areas he's always strong, and maybe just a little weaker in the areas that he's been weak. One of them, and I think it's his biggest issue, is his distance control with irons and wedges, and he lost a lot of strokes approaching. He needs to be hitting more than 9 greens of regulation, no matter where he drives it.
Only 11 guys in the field lost more strokes on approach than Bryson DeChambeau. He lost 3.5. He was second off the tee, second to only Jason Kokrak through 2 rounds. But when you bleed 3.5 strokes on approach and you are closer than everybody else in the field, that is it's ugly. It's bad. Webb Simpson also missed the cut. I don't know what we expected from Webb. It was kind of not his first start, but he's only played twice since April. He's been dealing with the neck injury. He had a chance to make birdie on his final hole of the day to make the cut, and he made bogey instead. So it kind of looked worse than it was, but Webb's game not sharp at the moment.
No, it's not. Now, that being said, to go shoot 1 under, just like Bryson, the margin for contending in an event and missing the cut in an event is next to nothing, right? Think about Abraham Answer, what he did last week. It happens all the time, right? These guys, if you're sitting there right now in this tournament and you just made the cut, you're 7 shots back and you're in the mix. You make the cut, you can win. And it's really, there are a lot more events, at least it seems like this. It seems like a lot more events on the PGA Tour are getting to where the leader through 2 rounds and the guy who just made the cut through 2 rounds is a lot tighter. There's been a lot of 6 and 7 stroke differences between the cut and the leader this year, which to me makes a miscut a 1 under tournament for Webb and for Bryson, and it kind of makes it a little more okay. I don't think it means that they're really far off for Webb right now, but he's not in the form that he was. He hasn't all year. He hasn't been in the form that he was last year, which is extremely good. It's just been a little bit off from last year.
Yeah, I think if you would have told me Webb Simpson wouldn't win this season, I would have been very surprised. He has not won yet. Obviously, some time to go in some events that he has played. Yet. I was just gonna say he's got Wyndham still on the calendar, but I think I would be surprised to this point. Yeah. Of course, the injury certainly goes a long way to stopping that. So here's what we're going to do. We've got 2 more rounds to go at the Rocket Mortgage. We've got 2 more recap pods coming for you. But for now, let me thank producer Jacob. He does all the hard work behind the scenes. That right there, it's Greg DuCharme, who you can find on Twitter at @TheRealGFD. And you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut, and we'll catch you next time.